Chapter 756 Gratitude Banquet 1. When it was almost noon, Bai Jingping and the other officials were finally here. Of course, Jiyu Chungrui was a third-grade official, after all, so he did not go to welcome the guests. Instead, he, Mr. Jiyu, and second uncle Jiyu helped the patriarch entertain the guests near the ancestral hall. Bai Jingping and the others were led in by Jiyu Chengxi. After arriving, he immediately came over and bowed. I am Bai Jingping, Tian Jingzhong. Greetings, Lord Jiyu. The two of you, please get up. We have really gone through thick and thin together. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. Jiyu Chungrui stepped forward and greeted them. Also, I haven't congratulated the two of you for your promotion. Same here, same here. How long do you plan to stay this time? Let's meet up when you're free. Bai Jingping suggested. No problem. I'll go to the county town when I have time. Let's have a good gathering at Hongyun restaurant. Jiyu Chungrui replied. We'll be waiting. Bai Jingping laughed. After saying that, he politely greeted Jiyu Chengye and went to look for Jiyu Chengxi, the main character of the day. Hello, brother-in-law. Jiyu Chungrui walked up to Constable Zhong. Hello. I heard that sister-in-law is pregnant. Congratulations. Upted on BX0vel. CM same to you. We weren't around when you got married. Come to our house after you're done with your work in the afternoon. No problem. We don't plan to go back today and have plenty of time. That's good. Let's gather around and talk. Otherwise, meeting each other again in the future won't be easy. That's right. At this moment, the village chief walked over with a few other village chiefs nearby and bowed. Then, he invited them to sit down and said, Everyone, sit down and have a cup of tea. Third brother, let me do it. After Feng Chun finished speaking, he took the kettle from his hand. The village chief saw that Jiyu Chungrui did not put on any air. He smiled and asked, Chungrui, you're back. How many days can you stay? After Chengxi leaves, I'll be going back too. Grandpa Qian, do you want to go to the capital with me to see how prosperous the capital is? Jiyu Chungrui smiled. The village chief quickly shook his head. No, I'm old. I'm afraid I won't be able to return here after a trip to the capital. Jiyu Chungrui sized him up and saw that his expression was not too good. No wonder he did not see him yesterday. Grandpa Qian, are you feeling unwell? Do you need me to take a look at you? She asked. That will be great. I just feel that these old bones are getting useless. I'm panting after walking a distance. After the village chief finished speaking, he coughed twice and took a sip of tea before handing his hand to him. Jiyu Chungrui took his pulse and said, It's not a big problem. In the future, eat more Chinese yam, jujube, and wolfberries. Basically, your weakness is caused by insufficient blood and energy. He didn't say that Grandpa Qian was almost at the end of his rope, which was why the weakness and malnourished look. He could still live for 2 or 3 years if he cared for his body well. Otherwise, it was hard to say if he could even live past the following year. To put it bluntly, it was because of the disaster a few years ago. Otherwise, I wouldn't suffer such a blow to my health. The village chief replied helplessly. Indeed. Those elderly in those years were either dead or injured. It wasn't easy. At this moment, a village chief echoed. Yeah. In those few years, not only did the elderly not eat well, but they also lacked medical care. It was not easy for anyone to survive. Oh, right. What kind of crops are planted in the nearby villages? Jiyu Chungrui asked. Our village mainly produces sweet potatoes. In half a year, we can also plant some corn. Our village also mainly plants sweet potatoes. We also found some rice seeds and plan to plant them in the future. Chapter 757 Gratitude Banquet 2. Now, our county seems to be mainly planting sweet potatoes. However, the yield of this thing is high. I'm afraid that we won't be able to sell it after planting it. Indeed. I heard from the boat runners that Big Ming is already selling sweet potatoes everywhere. I'm afraid it's really not easy to sell. Then leave it for me. When the sweet potatoes are harvested in autumn, I'll get my subordinates to go to the various villages to collect them. Jiyu Chungrui said. Really? Of course, we plan to build a vermicelli workshop. We will use a large number of sweet potatoes, so you can plant as many as you can. Oh right, there's also chili, soybeans, and broad beans. You can all plant them. Well, take as much as you have. With your words, we have an idea. Then we'll go back and tell the villagers. Tell me, when we collect them, until we reach the Mountain Taste residence, Manager Sun will arrange it. On the other end, Bai Jingping was surprised to hear people discussing Jiyu Chengxi's land as he passed by. Jiyu Chengxi came over and sat down after a round of politeness. When I was walking over just now, I heard that you rejected the offer of those wealthy families. Is that true? Yes, this little brother only agreed to the village, which is the Tian and Jiyu clans. Everyone else, including his relatives, rejected him. Upted on BX0vel. CM Firstly, my father is getting old, and my brother is the only one who can't handle it. Also, I won't be at home all year round in the future. I'm afraid that it'll cause trouble again, so I rejected it. Isn't this just nice? Jiyu Chengxi smiled. Can let you collect more taxes, right? That's true. Bai Jingping nodded in agreement. He was different from him. He might not be able to come back for many years. If there were any changes at home, he would not be able to care at all. It was better not to provoke them from the beginning. Oh right, which county did you get assigned to? She asked curiously. The county where Chen Peng used to live is a flat plain. It's not easy to make achievements there. Bai Jingping was stunned for a moment. After remembering who Chen Peng was, he laughed in his heart. After that, he said, each has its own benefits. It's also stable there. Now that everything has just calmed down, it's still easy to make achievements. Oh right, has Lord Sun been transferred to the Tranquil Sun residence to be the magistrate? That's true. You can ask him more when you go over. His ability is quite good. I will. On the female side, Madame Wang brought her 2 daughters-in-law and Jiyu Zi. Madame Liu, Madame Yarrow, Madame Yang, and Jiyu Chengyes' daughter-in-law, Madame Yu, were entertaining the ladies. After exchanging pleasantries and everyone sat down, a woman walked up to Madame Wang and said, Madame Jiyu is so blessed. Your son has passed the Jinsha examination at such a young age. His future will definitely be bleak. Madame Tian, you flatter me. I was just lucky. Lady Wang smiled. You're too humble. I have a niece in my maiden family. Although she came from a merchant family, she's literate and can manage her own shop. Do you want to matchmake them? Has already married and has a son who's not even 2 years old, so I think we should forget about this matter. No matter what, has still a county magistrate. Isn't it too rare for him to have a woman inside and outside? I don't think it will be chaotic if there are too many women. Besides, we're from a small family. We really can't afford to raise so many women. I think we should forget about it. Madame Wang saw that she still wanted to persuade her and saw that there was a guest at the door, so she immediately went up to greet him. Chapter 758 Gratitude Banquet 3. Sister Bai, how many words have you learned recently? You have to hurry up and learn more. Otherwise, if you can't read even an article, how can you help Lord Jiyu manage his residence? Mrs. Bai looked at her friend and was furious. Wasn't she just mocking her for not being worthy of her husband? However, she recalled what her husband had said before and smiled. There's no rush. Chengxi is teaching me personally. He said he would also spare 25 minutes daily to teach me. Also, accounting is not a small matter. You have to learn it as soon as possible. Otherwise, how can you manage the food in the residence? Indeed. Chengxi said that he would definitely teach me within half a month. It won't delay anything. Don't worry. That's good. Oh, right, you have to learn royal etiquette quickly. You'll use it when you socialize in the future. Don't worry. Chengxi said that he would teach me slowly in the future. No matter what her friends said next, Mrs. Bai replied to them with a smile and said Jiyu Chengxi would teach her. The women around her were envious, jealous, and hateful. However, there was nothing they could do. They couldn't possibly sow discord between them, right? At the same time, They also realized that she was no longer feeling inferior or impatient. Instead, she looked happy and trusted, annoying them. Mrs. Bai looked at them, and her nervous heart finally settled down. When they were distracted, she left with the excuse of entertaining guests. Upted on BX0vel. CM. Just as she got up, she met Mrs. Yang's gaze. She stepped forward and asked, "Sister-in-law Chengji, did you see what happened just now?" "Yeah, you handled it well." Mrs. Yang smiled. "If it were you, how would you deal with it? To be honest, they have belittled me so many times. I'm really sick of them. You did very well just now. The more they say that, the more you talk about how sweet you and your husband are, what he gave you, what he did for you, and so on. Once they get annoyed, you can find all kinds of excuses to slip away. If you really can't, just ignore them. In short, don't panic. Once you panic, they will succeed. I'm afraid this kind of thing will happen more in the future. You have to practice the ability to hide your emotions. It sounds so difficult. So, don't look at those madams and young ladies who seemed all glamorous. However, practice makes perfect. You'll get used to it after a long time." At the same time, several people approached Mrs. Fang, Guz, sixth aunt Gu, and even Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow to inquire about Gu Chengsis' marriage. Mrs. Fang and Guz directly refused to interfere. Mrs. Liu and the other three did not want to care. Instead, Mrs. Yarrow picked and chose, wishing to set up a marriage for Gu Chengxi. Of course, she was not interested in the lowest-ranked ones, and the highest-ranked ones were not interested in Gu Chengxis' status as a concubine, so they could not conclude in the end. During this time, Mrs. Bai's in-laws also heard the news that someone wanted to stuff women into her son-in-law's house. They immediately went forward and argued, almost causing a ruckus. After sending all the guests away, everyone was tired. After Gu Chengxi finished his work, he saw Mrs. Bai walking over with a long face. "What's wrong? Did someone say something to you again?" "No, but there are quite a number of people asking about you today. There are at least 8 families. More than that. I think there are more than 20 of them. Fortunately, we all rejected them. Be careful when you speak and act outside in the future. Don't let anyone catch you." Mrs. Wang walked over and said. Chapter 759 Chatting. I will be careful. Gu Chengxi nodded solemnly. To be honest, some still took the initiative to offer him women today, but he rejected them all. No wonder Mrs. Bai was so paranoid all day. To be honest, if it were him, he would also be angry. It's good that you understand. In the future, if there's anything, you can discuss it with me. It's inconvenient for us to interfere, and we can't even interfere when you're in your new place. After Mrs. Wang finished speaking, she waved her hand and let them go. After they left, Gu Chengxi was so tired that he lay on the bed. On the other end, after Gu Chengrui brought Constable Zhong home, he made some tea before asking, "Brother-in-law, how's the family recently? Are the children getting along well?" "It's pretty good. The children are sensible, so we don't have to worry much." "Oh, right, I heard that Ju Ying is pregnant. How many months is she along now?" Constable Zhong asked. "She got pregnant on New Year's Eve. It's been almost 4 months now." "That's great to hear. It's just in time for the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. The weather isn't that hot anymore. Indeed, we specially calculated these days for comfortable weather during the delivery." "This can be calculated?" "Of course, as long as there are no problems with both parties' bodies, they can give birth whenever they want." After Gu Chengrui finished speaking, he even taught him how to calculate. Constable Zhong's eyes lit up after hearing that. He really did not expect that there was so much knowledge about giving birth. Upted on BX0vel. CM. It seemed that he had to go back and put it into practice. With 2 children together, their relationship would be more secure in the future. After that, they started to chat, from home to politics. On the other end, 6th Aunt Gu was also pulling Guz to ask how the couple was doing. Guz blushed and replied, "It's good. My mother-in-law doesn't meddle, and the 2 children are quite sensible. Phew, I can tell from your appearance that you're doing well. We can rest assured now. However, You have to hurry up and have another child. Otherwise, your relationship will fade as time passes. It's hard to say when you're old. Sixth Aunt Jiyu smiled. Yes. You have 2 daughters now. It's better to have a son by your side. You'll have a filial son when you're old, and it'll be more lively in your later years. Mrs. Yarrow echoed. When the others heard this, they persuaded her to give birth to 1 or 2 more children as soon as possible. Sorry for making everyone worry. I will remember this. Jiyu Zi smiled. On the other end, after Jiyu Chungrui sent Constable Zhong off, he locked the door and went to his old home. When he entered the courtyard, there was a wave of laughter. It turned out that Jiyu Zichio, Jiyu Zishan, and their children were all there. What are you talking about? Why are you having such a good time? He asked after entering the house. Chungrui, you're here. Come and take a seat. We're playing with the children. It's quite fun. Second Uncle Jiyu waved at him. Indeed, 2 or 3-year-olds are the cutest. Madam Chiao chuckled in agreement. Jiyu Chungrui smiled as he took out some coins from his wallet. Here, half a tael each. Take them to buy candy or something delicious. Thank you, third uncle. Jiyu Chengji's son, Jiyu Jiehao, took it and smiled. Not bad, you still remember third uncle. I will bring you to the county for a big meal another day. Jiyu Chungrui said. From the sound of it, you'll be treating everyone. Mr. Jiyu said. That's right. In 2 days, we'll have a gathering with Lord Bai and Lord Tian. Jiyu Chungrui nodded and continued, eldest brother, second brother, you should come. Help me accompany them to drink. Chapter 760 Suggestion. That's exactly what I want. It's also beneficial for us to build a good relationship with them. Jiyu Chengye replied. Jiyu Chengji would not refuse after hearing this. After all, getting to know more influential people would definitely be helpful to their business in the future. Next, Jiyu Chungrui mentioned his plans for the harvest of chili and sweet potatoes after autumn to everyone so that they could plant more appropriately. Jiyu Chungrui accompanied Jiyu Chengxi to the county town's dental clinic, buying 2 nannies and 2 servants who knew martial arts. On the way back, Jiyu Chengxi asked, Brother Chungrui, is vermicelli selling well? Can you open a shop in Pingyang province? That way, the people there can generate some income. You want everyone to plant more sweet potatoes? That's right. It's all plains over there, and there's no pier for docks. We can only rely on a variety of crops to make a living. We can open a shop, but as you said, there's not even a decent dock there. It's probably inconvenient to transport the goods. Therefore, the quantity we get would be not much. However, there were benefits to being on the plains. The land on the plains is generally more fertile and more accessible for harvest. In my opinion, why don't you think of a way to harvest seeds? This way, the overall income of the people there will increase by a large margin. Seeds. Yes, the seeds of any crop will degenerate after a long time. However, with good land and proper management, as long as we pick plump seeds every time, we can slow down the degeneration of the seeds. Upted on BX0vel. CM then, you can sell the seeds to other places. It's much more cost-effective than selling the grain alone. Also, you can plant chili and cotton. I can accept these. As for potatoes, let's wait a little longer. I'll look for you when we expand there. Jiyu Chengxi nodded thoughtfully. After returning home, Mrs. Bai led the servants she had bought to Jiyu Zi's house. Jiyu Chungrui took advantage of the fact that no one was around, and they parted ways to give Jiyu Chengxi 5,000 taels of silver. Take this. When you take office, you'll have to make arrangements for everyone. You'll have to set up a livelihood. It'll definitely come in handy. I don't want it. This is too much. Take it. Just treat it as a loan. Just return it to me in the future. But don't be greedy. Yang Zicheng is an example. He didn't have a good ending. Don't worry, I have my morality. My little brother will be my reminder. Okay, I'll go back then. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked home. Jiyu Chengxi looked at the silver notes in his hand and felt they weighed 1,000 pounds. At the same time, he silently remembered this favor in his heart. After returning home, Jiyu Chungsi told the patriarch about this matter alone. The patriarch was stunned for a moment. Keep it. Just like he said, when you get there and buy some property, it will at least be enough for your expenses. It also saves you from worrying about your livelihood. Also, I must remind you again that you are not allowed to be greedy. After all, a monthly salary of 10 taels of silver is not enough to do anything. Whether for social gatherings or peace of mind as an official, they could not do without silver. However, there are only 200 taels of silver left at their home. Even if he gave them all to Jiyu Chungsi, he could only buy a few sets of clothes to support his appearance. I know, father. I won't. Jiyu Chungsi nodded solemnly. Over the next few days, Jiyu Chungrui either went to the manor to help or followed son Hongliang to the workshop. 5 days later, after he was almost done with his family matters, Jiyu Chungrui treated the people in the manor to a meal at noon and gathered together. The next night, they gathered at Grassland Taste Restaurant and invited manager Liu to have a good meal together. Chapter 761 The death of Madame Qiao. The day before his departure, Jiyu Chungrui brought Jiyu Chengye, Jiyu Chengji, and his son to the county town to treat the county officials to a feast. On the day of departure, Jiyu Chungrui and Jiyu Chenglin had just packed their luggage when they suddenly heard a hurried knock on the door. Jiyu Chungrui immediately ran over and opened the door to see Jiyu Chengshi standing there with red eyes. Before he could say anything, Jiyu Chengshi said anxiously, "Chungrui, it's a good thing you didn't leave. Grandma doesn't seem to be able to make it. You should go and take a look. What happened? Wasn't everything fine last night? I don't know. She suddenly collapsed. You should hurry over and take a look. Chenglin, let's not pack up yet. Let's go and see Grandma." Jiyu Chungrui turned around and shouted. After he came out and locked the door, they ran back to their old home. Before he entered the door, he heard waves of crying. Jiyu Chengrui's heart skipped a beat, thinking it shouldn't be so fast. "Chungrui, you're here. Hurry up and check on your grandmother. Why did she suddenly collapse?" Mr. Jiyu immediately waved at him when he saw him. Jiyu Chungrui had no choice but to run a few steps. When he entered the house, he saw Madame Qiao lying on the bed. He quickly went forward to take her pulse and do a comprehensive examination. "Father, prepare for the funeral." What's going on? Why is it so sudden? Upted on BX0vel. CM. A cerebral hemorrhage means that the blood vessels in the brain have ruptured. I can use acupuncture to wake Grandma up and see if she has any last words. When Jiyu Chungrui said this, he asked Mrs. Huang for an embroidery needle and quickly stabbed Madame Qiao with it. A moment later, Mrs. Qiao woke up. She first looked at everyone in confusion. Finally, she looked at Jiyu Chungrui. "Chungrui, am I not going to make it?" She could clearly feel that her limbs were no longer under her control, and even her head felt highly uncomfortable, as if it were covered in a thick fog. If there's anything you need, just tell us. We'll do our best," Jiyu Chungrui said. Madame Qiao smiled and said, "Take out the small box in my bed and open it." Jiyu Chungrui immediately bent over and took out a small box from underneath her bed. He opened it and placed it in front of her. Madame Qiao turned her head and looked at the crowd. "Divide this silver into 3 portions. Eldest brother and second brother each have 1 portion. Chungrui and Chenglin each have 1 portion. The rest of the jewelry could be divided equally between Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow. Everyone must work together and be a good support for consort. Xian." The last word was almost inaudible, but from the shape of her mouth, everyone could understand what she meant. When the last word fell, Madame Qiao also stopped breathing. Jiyu Chungrui quickly put away the needle. Everyone saw her reaction and understood what he meant. They pounced on her and cried bitterly. Especially second Uncle Jiyu, who was crying so hard that his nose was dripping with tears. About 15 minutes later, Father Jiyu stood up and said, "Liu, sister-in-law, put on the shroud for mother. Chengye, Chengji, inform the clansmen." The 4 of them immediately took action when they heard that. Ji-yu Chung-rue followed second uncle Ji-yu to the town to buy a coffin. When they returned, the mourning shed had already been built. This time, Ji-yu Chung-rue also met Father Gus' new concubine, Qin-she. She looked like Ju Zheng and was a smart woman. He heard she was not at home before because she was in town for her birth confinement. Ji-yu Chung-rue just greeted her. After introducing himself, he did not say a word to her again. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Due to Ji-yu Chung-rue and Ji-yu Chengye's relationship, although only a few people were notified, many people still came. Therefore, these 7 days were quite tiring. After that, they set off on their way back to the capital. Chapter 762 Giving birth to a daughter in the blink of an eye. It was autumn, and the fruits on the farm had ripened. This morning, Ji-yu Chung-rue was about to go to the manor to teach everyone how to brew wine when Ju-ying suddenly felt a pain in her stomach. She quickly stopped him. "Rui, don't go. I think I'm going to give birth." "Huh?" That quickly? Ji-yu Chung-rue was stunned. After he reacted, he quickly asked Shizhu to call Mother Chiu and the midwife over. He helped Ju-ying sit on a chair and took her pulse. After a while, his hand trembled. "You're really going to give birth, but it looks like it's still early. Let me help you walk around the courtyard." "All right." After Ju-ying finished speaking, she slowly walked out with him. Not long after, Mother Chiu and the midwife rushed over. They quickly set up the delivery room and prepared everything they needed. Ju-ying's contraction had also begun when they were almost done with their preparations. After Ji-yu Chung-rue sent her into the delivery room, he rechecked her pulse. After confirming there was no problem, he handed her to the midwife and said, "I'm a doctor. I'll wait outside. Call me if there's anything." "Ah, don't worry, master." The midwife nodded and got busy. Ji-yu Chung-rue walked out of the delivery room after that. Ju-ying's scream was heard when he stepped out the door. Ji-yu Chung-rue was so scared that his legs went weak. Then, he leaned against the pillar in the veranda and stared at the delivery room. Upted on BX0vel. CM he looked at the servant girls, who came in and out with hot water basins. 2 hours later, with the loud cry of a baby, their eldest daughter was born. Ji-yu Chung-rue immediately got up and ran in, frightening Mother Chiu. Seeing that it was him, she immediately smiled. "Congratulations, master. It's a daughter. Both mother and daughter are safe." Thank you. I'll go in and take a look." After Ji-yu Chung-rue finished speaking, he immediately ran in. Mother Chiu wanted to stop him at first. After all, the delivery room was a place that men shouldn't enter. However, before she could say anything, he had already gone in. After Ji-yu Chung-rue entered the room, the midwife and the servant girls were almost done cleaning up. When she saw him enter, she immediately smiled and went forward. "Congratulations, master. Mistress is blessed, and the birth went very smoothly." "Thank you. Please wait outside for a moment." After Ji-yu Chung-rue finished speaking, he walked to the bed. When he saw the exhausted Ju-ying, he sat down and took her pulse. "Take care of the child. I want to sleep." Ju-ying opened her eyes and said, "Go to sleep. I'll take care of the child." After Ji-yu Chung-rue finished speaking, he kissed her forehead and tucked her in. He got up and looked at the baby in the cradle. The baby was dirty and red with blood, and she looked pretty ugly, truth be told. But no matter how he looked at her, she looked all too adorable. He smiled and kissed her little fist. After checking her pulse and confirming that nothing was wrong, he kissed her again before turning around and walking out. When he arrived outside, he saw the midwife waiting outside. He took 2 silver ingots from his wallet and handed them to her. The midwife immediately stood up and smiled. "Master, you're too polite. This is what a midwife should do. Since you are a doctor, then I will take my leave." To be honest, it was not that she had never received such a high amount of thank you money before, but that was after a difficult birth. She had never seen such a generous person, and the rumors seemed true. The relationship between the husband and wife was excellent. Even when Ju-ying gave birth to a daughter, Ji-yu Chung-rue wasn't unhappy even one bit. How would she know that not only did Jiyu Chungrui not value sons over daughters, but he preferred having a cute daughter? Not to mention, she was their first child in 2 lifetimes. Chapter 763. The Jiyu family arrives in the morning. Jiyu Chungrui stayed in the house for the whole morning. After confirming that Ju Ying was not in danger, he went to the kitchen to give some instructions. In the afternoon, he rushed to the manor. After teaching Head Fang how to brew wine overnight, he rushed back the following day. After dinner, he personally brought in a bowl of sesame oil and pork liver soup, together with a bowl of rice. You must be hungry. Hurry up and eat. Did you follow the recipe for a delivery confinement meal? Ju Ying glanced at the things he had brought in. Yes, it's nutritious, and it can also help with your discharge. It's a good thing. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he wanted to feed her. Ju Ying smelled the fishy smell of the pig liver. She immediately frowned and said, "This is too smelly. How can I eat it? Let's make do. I'll cook it next time. It'll definitely be nutritious and delicious." Ju Ying tried to taste it, but she quickly spat it out. She pushed it away and said, "Hurry up and make it then. I don't want to eat this. It tastes too bad." "All right, I'll make you a cup of brown sugar water first. Remember to drink it while it's hot. I'll make it again for you now." After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he carried the food out. However, although the food he made still smelled, it wasn't too bad. Ju Ying had no choice but to pinch her nose and eat it. Just as she put down his bowl, the baby woke up. "All right, our little princess is awake." After saying that, Jiyu Chungrui carried her from the cradle and handed her over. "Don't call her that," Ju Ying reminded him. "It might cause a misunderstanding." Upted on BX0vel. CM Jiyu Chungrui was stunned for a moment. He raised his hand and patted his mouth. They were in a feudal dynasty, so he couldn't call their daughter that. He hesitated momentarily before saying, "Let's call her Guogua. Gua means fruit, and she's the fruit of our love. It's also the season of autumn harvest, where fruits are plentiful." Guogua. It sounds like a boy's name, Ju Ying commented as she fed the baby. "Neutral, not too masculine. I'll follow you. I'll leave her main name to you too. All right, put her to sleep after you feed her. I have to prepare to report the good news." After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Then, he began to prepare invitations for their celebration. However, because there were no elders on both sides, Jiyu Chungrui brought Mother Kujiyu to give Guogua a simple bath. Therefore, the invitation was for Guoguo's 1-month-old birthday. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Through Jiyu Chengrui's meticulous care, Ju Ying clearly felt that her body was much better and her energy had also recovered. Ju Ying also resumed her work in her interspace at night. Of course, Jiyu Chungrui would take care of the physical labor. One morning, Ju Ying had just finished a bowl of red bean soup when Shizhu walked in and reported, "Master, Mistress, people from your hometown came. They said that they are from your father and uncle's family." Jiyu Chungrui was surprised to hear that and figured out they might have come for the child. He quickly stood up and said, "Help clean this place up. I'll go and invite them personally." "Yes, Master." Shizhu nodded and tidied up the room as Ju Ying changed into a set of clean clothes. When they were almost done, Mrs. Liu, Mrs. Yarrow, and Mrs. Yang each carried a bag and walked in. Ju Ying saw this and wanted to get up. "Don't move," Mrs. Liu said hurriedly. "You mustn't catch a cold at this time." "Yeah, we're not outsiders. Just sit there in peace," Mrs. Yarrow echoed. She walked over and sized her up. "Your little face is so rosy. It looks like you've recovered quite well." "Yeah, it's mainly because of Chengruis herbal dishes." Ju Ying smiled and replied. Chapter 764. Gift herbal dishes. Mrs. Yarrow asked in surprise. "Yes, herbal dishes. He said that I'm lacking nutrition after giving birth, so I need to make up for it as soon as possible. Eldest sister-in-law, why didn't you bring your children here? I was afraid that they would cause a ruckus, so I didn't let them come." Mrs. Yang smiled. "Ah, The children are still young and are noisy. Let them follow your second uncle in the outer courtyard. Mrs. Yarrow echoed. She looked at the cradle and asked, I heard that he gave birth to a daughter. Her name is Guogua. Yeah, she's quite a lively girl. Ju Ying replied with a smile. It's normal. She's just a baby, and babies cry when they need something. After saying that, Mrs. Liu gathered the 3 bags and added, Oh, right, this is a little gift from us. It's also from the clan, too. After saying that, she opened the 3 bags and began to take them out. There were baby clothes, shoes, blankets, and even a cloak. There were also some gold accessories, mainly bracelets and longevity locks. However, only Mr. Gu, second Uncle Gu, and the village chief's gifts were made of gold, the rest were all silver. Help me thank everyone when we go back. I'll make up for it the next time we go back. Ju Ying, Mrs. Yang asked in surprise. Don't tell me you're the one who's feeding the child. Yes. Chung Rui said it's good for both the mother and the child's health to feed the child personally. They will be stronger and more resistant to diseases. Is there such a thing? I'm not too sure either. I'll just do as he says. Besides, when I feed my daughter, our bond will deepen. That's true. After chatting for a while, Ju Ying also knew that they didn't just come to visit but also helped transport a large amount of chili and cumin. After the baby woke up, the 3 of them looked at each other. They stood up and said, She's awake. We won't disturb you anymore. Well, come and see you later. All right, you have to stay for a few more days. When the full moon comes, do help us entertain the guests. That's not a problem. Take your rest, we're leaving. After they left, Ju Ying lay down and began to feed the baby. After a while, Jiyu Chungrui walked over and said, Babe, there are too many people here. There isn't enough food at home, so I'm going to bring them to a restaurant to eat later. I won't be able to cook lunch for you. How many came? Father, Mrs. Liu, second uncle, his wife, eldest brother's family of 4, Chengshi, and Jiyu Ziqiong. However, Jiyu Ziqiong is seasick, so she didn't come to see you. Go ahead. If we can't arrange them a guest house, let them stay in the east courtyard. The possibility of Wanning coming back to stay is low. That's exactly what I will be doing. You should rest. I'll make the arrangements now. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. After he left, Ju Ying called Shizhu in and asked her to put away the things Mrs. Liu and the others had brought. In the blink of an eye, Guogua was 1 month old. At the same time, Guoguo's official name was also decided. She was called Jiyu Yunxia. Early in the morning, Ju Ying asked someone to prepare a bath. However, she did not take a bath outside because the weather was cold. Instead, she asked Jiyu Chungrui to watch over the baby and went inside her interspace to bathe. When she finished breakfast, Princess Mingyu rushed over with her maidservants. When she saw Guogua, she exclaimed happily, Sister Ju, what a cute baby you gave birth to. This child's eyes are like gems, black and shiny. Chapter 765 1 month old. 1. A child is like a piece of white paper. Her eyes are clear and bright, so of course, she looks good. You're about to give birth, aren't you? Ju Ying asked. That's right, my imperial mother said that there's less than a month left. You have to be careful. Stay in this room and don't go out later. Don't knock into something. That's what I thought too. I'll watch over the baby today. After saying that, Mingyu asked the servant girl beside her to open a square box. This is a little toy for her. Don't mind it, okay? How could that be? It's inlaid with high-quality white jade. But isn't it too expensive for a baby? It's nothing. If she likes it, she can wear it for a lifetime. After chatting for a while, Ju Ying also learned that the northern border had started to have conflicts again. Soon, elderly consort and consort walked in together, giving Guogua a gold-inlaid jade safety lock. After a few polite greetings, consort went over to show concern for Mingyu. Ju Ying also knew from her conversation with elderly consort that her high blood pressure had acted up. She wanted to find Jiyu Chungrui to take her pulse and prescribe some medicine to bring back, apart from celebrating Guoguo's month-old birthday. Ju Ying reminded her, this disease is easy to relapse when the seasons change. You have to be careful. Don't catch a cold. Especially in the morning, you must wait for the sun to rise and the cold air to dissipate before coming out. Now that it's foggy, catching a cold will be detrimental to your body. That makes sense. I just rushed into the palace the morning before yesterday and felt uncomfortable when I came back. If there's an emergency, wear a hat or a headscarf. All right, I'll remember this. Following that, many more people came in one after another. However, they were afraid of disturbing the baby, so they quickly went outside. Ju Ying received a lot of jewelry on Guoguo's behalf. When it was almost time to eat, Niu Fugui suddenly ran in from outside and shouted, Consort Xian is here. Jiyu Chungrui immediately stood up and bowed. Then, he noticed that Eunuch Qian had also come down from the carriage behind him and gave him a simple bow. Eunuch Qian returned the greeting. Lord Jiyu, you are too polite. I am here today on behalf of the Emperor and the Empress to congratulate you. Welcome, please come in. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he led them in. After Jiyu Wanning entered, she walked straight to the main courtyard with Chun Shi. When everyone saw her, they immediately stood up and bowed. After Jiyu Wanning returned the greeting to elderly consort An and the other elders, she turned around and walked into the bedroom. Ju Ying and Mingyu were about to stand up and bow when Jiyu Wanning waved her hand. No need. I'll take a look at my niece first. After saying that, she walked up to Guoguo. Guoguo happened to be awake. When she saw her gorgeous outfit, she immediately smiled and stretched out her hand. Jiyu Wanning smiled. Guoguo, since you like me so much, I'll give you a little gift. After saying that, she put a jade pendant on her neck. However, she realized that Guoguo was still staring at her, and her small hands scratched at her. Jiyu Wanning picked her up curiously. Guoguo grabbed the red coral tassel on Jiyu Wanning's hairpin when she lowered her head. Ju Ying quickly stepped forward and lifted Guoguo up. She took her over and said, Stinky girl, you dare to grab anything. It's okay. If she likes it, just give it to her. It's just a hairpin. After Jiyu Wanning finished speaking, she was about to pull it down. Don't. Not to mention that you can't mess up your appearance, we can't spoil her either. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if she becomes a little tyrant. Ju Ying quickly stopped Jiyu Wanning. Guoguo might have sensed that the thing she liked was about to fly away. Her little mouth pouted, and she immediately started crying. Chapter 766 1 month old, 2. I used to hear from my mother that children like things with bright colors. I didn't expect it to be true, Mingyu said with a smile. After saying that, she took off the coral bracelet she was wearing and waved it in front of Guoguo. As expected, Guoguo immediately stopped crying. She grabbed it and stuffed it into her mouth. Ju Ying immediately snatched it over and returned it to Mingyu. Children put everything they catch into their mouths. Don't let them take hold of something. Mingyu shook her head. If she likes it, then keep it. It's just nice. When she cries, we can coax her. Seeing that Guoguo was about to cry again, Ju Ying immediately stuffed the red rag doll she had prepared into her arms. The little girl immediately stopped crying and started tearing the doll with both hands. It looks like Guoguo likes red. Jiyu Wanning smiled. Yeah. Ju Ying nodded and took out a beautiful rag doll resembling a small watermelon. Guoguo immediately grabbed it in her hand and started playing with it. She sure knows how to play. After the three of them chatted, Jiyu Wanning went to look for Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow. Soon, the banquet began. Ju Ying carried her baby out and walked around the banquet to let everyone recognize her. Coincidentally, Guoguo had also started crying. She toasted everyone with water instead of wine and carried Guoguo back to her room. At this time, everyone also noticed the abnormality. Elderly consort and looked at Mrs. Yarrow beside her and asked, Is Ju Ying breastfeeding her daughter? Yes, Chungrui said that if a biological mother takes care of their baby, their body will recover faster, and it will be good for the baby's health. However, they also have nannies ready for the baby's care. Mrs. Yarrow replied with a smile. Everyone was amazed when they heard this. However, there was no evidence, so they did not seek an explanation. Instead, they lowered their heads and ate. Of course, those who knew about Jiyu Chengru's medical skills took this to heart. The most obvious ones were Mingyu and Jiyu Wanning, who decided to give it a try in the future. While Guoguo was asleep in the afternoon, Ju Ying and Jiyu Chungrue sent the guests away. After finishing her work, Mrs. Yao directly collapsed on the chair. I haven't dealt with those people for many years. This sudden contact is really physically and mentally exhausting. It's been hard on you guys today. Think about what you want to eat, and let's have a good gathering tonight. Ju Ying asked after pouring a cup of chrysanthemum tea for each of them. That's true. You couldn't eat anything before. Now that you're out of confinement, we can finally have a meal together. Why don't we have a hot pot tonight? It's been a long time since we've had that. Good gracious, once you open your mouth, you've blocked everyone's suggestion. Mr. Jiyu then asked, oh right, do you have prawns, fish, and so on? You can have some of that. If you want to eat, just go ahead and order. We have a restaurant. If we don't have those ingredients at home, we can just go to the restaurant and take them. Jiyu Chungrue added. Let's go together. Jiyu Chengji replied. Yeah, let's go now. Bring Chengxi along and take some of everything. After Jiyu Chungrue finished speaking, he led them out. When Mr. Jiyu and second uncle Jiyu saw this, they returned to their rooms to rest. Ju Ying chatted with Mrs. Yarrow and the others. Only then did she know that the two families had already separated after Mrs. Qiao's death. They came over this time to marry Jiyu Ziqiang to someone in the capital, and then second uncle's family would move back to the capital one after another. After all, the Yarrow family, the Yang family, the Huang family, and the Sun family were all in the capital. They wanted to come back. Ju Ying looked at Mrs. Liu after listening. She was relieved to see that she did not follow. Otherwise, their husband and wife's days would not be so leisurely if they returned. Chapter 767 East Continent, stable. However, at night, Ju Ying learned from Jiyu Chungrue that it was not that Father Jiyu and the others did not want to come to the capital, but that they wanted to wait for Jiyu Chungye to pass the scholar examination before returning to the capital. As for second uncle's family, Jiyu Chengxi did not like to study. If they waited for Chengxi, they would probably have to wait a long time. Moreover, it was uncertain that he would even pass, so they prepared to enter the capital in advance. I have to say, father and second uncle are really bold. Ju Ying said it with admiration. Don't they remember the big lesson of the previous raid? Aren't they afraid of implicating Wanning? Of course, they're afraid, but they're thinking more about the benefits Wanning has brought them. If Wanning can give birth to a prince, the Jiyu family will be even more glorious than before. Sigh, I don't understand. Let's take it one step at a time. Oh, right. Did they find a suitable groom for Ziqiang? Ju Ying asked. Not yet. Actually, I think they might as well look for Zilan. Although she's still young, she's second uncle's legitimate daughter. It'll be easier for people to accept her. Ziqiang is not young anymore. If she doesn't marry into the capital, she'll have to find someone in the countryside. No matter what, finding someone in the capital will at least be of some help. That's true. If they don't bring this up, we won't get involved. Of course, I don't want to be involved in such a troublesome thing. After everyone had rested at night, the two brought Guogua into the interspace and placed her in the villa. Then, the two of them went to do their things. Especially Ju Ying. A lot of work awaited her on the mountain and in the fields. After she finished the work in her interspace, she looked around the warehouse and found that the faith points on the East Continent had suddenly increased a lot. She looked over curiously and realized that fat chickens were rooming everywhere in the capital of the East Continent. Each rooster was about 20 pounds. Moreover, the chicks that hatched from the batch of eggs released before the new year had already begun to lay eggs, reproducing at a terrifying speed. This faith was produced by the farmers who had raised these chickens from scratch. Then, she looked to the north. At this time, the civil strife there had ended, and the first prince was the one who ascended the throne. However, Due to the lack of production, there were still many places where food was unavailable. This was also the root cause of the repeated conflicts at the border. Zhu Ying found a few of the poorest tribes and left them potatoes, hoping the border would be stable. After she finished that, she tried looking for King Hui, but she failed to find him. She wondered where he was hiding. She glanced at the emperor one last time. It was already late at night, and the emperor had settled down at Consort Xian's place. Zhu Ying especially took a look at his luck. One ball of black fog was left in his purple aura. She left and returned to the villa. Rui, do you think the Su family had the intention of rebelling back then? Zhu Ying asked after leaving the interspace. Why would you think that? Zhu Ying told him about the black fog in the emperor's purple aura. There were 3 balls of black fog before, but now only Majesty Kang is dead and 2 have disappeared. Jiyu Chungrui hesitated momentarily and replied, it could be the Su family, the retired emperor, or the 7th prince. However, no matter who it is, they are no longer a threat to the emperor. That's true. No matter what, it has already been destroyed. I just don't know when King Hui will appear. I don't think it will take long. When the North Continent has the ability to fight, he will definitely come forward. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he pulled her into his arms. Go to sleep. Otherwise, when Guogua wakes up, we'll be busy again. Chapter 768 Smallpox 1. The next day, after Jiyu Chungrui sent off Mr. Jiyu, Mrs. Liu, and second Uncle Jiyu, he went to the hospital to get busy. When free, he would check the restaurant's accounts and the manor. At the same time, he also wrote a letter to Sun Hongliang, writing down the recipe for the vermicelli, fermented bean curd, and chili oil and sending it over through Zhu Huiming's communication channel. Moreover, they had also started to recruit people for the hospital. Some studied medicine, some studied martial arts, and some had good culinary skills. In short, as long as they were helpful to them and had a clean background, he began to recruit them all. As for Mrs. Liu and the others, they rented a small courtyard in the western part of the city and moved out. Zhu Ying politely sent them off. However, she still had someone send them some pots, pans, food, and vegetables for their housewarming gifts. Then, she left them alone. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year, and the wine was successfully brewed. In order to quickly open up the market, Zhu Ying would bring 2 pounds of gifts to each family and explain the benefits. Sure enough, the love for wine caught on, especially among women. Immediately, someone came to buy more, and Zhu Ying used the excuse of taking care of Guogua and directly handed the matter to Head Fang. At the end of the year, she earned more than 13,000 taels of silver from wine alone. Therefore, when spring was awakening in the second year, Zhu Ying asked Head Fang to expand the grape plantation by another 200 acres. Including the previous ones, it accounted for nearly 400 acres of land planted with grapes. At the same time, news of Jiyu Waning's pregnancy came from the palace. Jiyu Ziqiong's marriage had also been decided. The groom was a minor official in the royal army with over 200 people under him, a local in the capital, Qin Wu. Relatively speaking, it was a suitable marriage. On this day, Zhu Ying was feeding Guogua some mashed potatoes when Jiyu Chungrui rushed in. There's a smallpox outbreak in the capital city. We have to be very careful now. Smallpox. Zhu Ying's heart jolted after hearing that. Smallpox was a deadly plague in ancient times. The key was that Guogua was still young and had not been given the vaccine yet. Yes, be careful. I have to go to the palace to see the emperor. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he hurriedly ran out. Mistress, what should we do now? Guoguo's nanny, Mrs. Lin, asked nervously. We can only prevent it. What's the use of being afraid? Oh, by the way, have you ever had smallpox before? Zhu Ying asked. No, it has been many years since smallpox appeared in the Ming dynasty. Mrs. Lin shook her head. Go inform the people in the residence and gather everyone. Remember not to say anything unnecessary. Yes. Mrs. Lin nodded and hurriedly went to call everyone. At this moment, Guogua saw that Zhu Ying had stopped feeding her and began to slap her arm. Ju Ying met her confused gaze and smiled before she continued feeding her. After she was done feeding her, everyone arrived in the main courtyard. After handing off Guogua to Mrs. Lin, she walked out and asked, "Butler Nyo, is everyone here?" "Yes. Other than the people in the restaurant, everyone else is here." Nyo Fugue stepped forward and replied, "Just now, Master came back and said there is a smallpox outbreak in the capital, so from today onwards, no one is allowed to go out unless it's absolutely necessary. If it is necessary to leave the place, change your clothes as soon as possible after you return. You have to boil them with disinfectant before wearing them again." In addition, before she could finish her words, everyone below exploded. Smallpox was something that could kill. Every one of them changed their expressions at the mention of it. Immediately, the crowd below buzzed. Ju Ying raised her hand and said, "All right, quiet down. Listen to me." Chapter 769 Smallpox, 2, Mistress, please continue. Nyo Fugue said. "The other thing is to buy lime powder and sprinkle some on every corner to prevent the disease from breeding." "Yes, I will arrange for someone to buy the lime powder." "Wait, go in the afternoon. I'll make some protective equipment." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she left all the people who knew needlework behind. She opened the warehouse and asked them to make a large number of 3-layer masks with fine cotton cloth. After she was done, she went to the study room and took out a few large jars of disinfectant that Jiyu Chungrue had made himself. She got someone to carry a jar out and soak all the masks. After drying them, she distributed them to everyone. However, she did not stop at this. She made another batch and planned to send it to the hospital. At the same time, she also made a batch of gloves. She used 2 layers of fabric and added a layer of oil paper in the middle to make it safer to use. On the other end, Jiyu Chungrue was running all the way to the palace. However, he did not go in when he reached the palace gate. Instead, he told the guards guarding the city from afar about the smallpox in the capital and asked them to go in and inform the emperor. This was so he wouldn't be blamed if someone in the palace was infected. When the guard heard this, he was shocked. He called someone to fill in for him and hurriedly ran into the palace. Eunuch Chen saw the guard running at an urgent speed. His heart thumped as he stepped forward to stop him. "What's the matter? Why are you so flustered? Do you know Dr. Jiyu Chungrue? He said that he discovered smallpox in the capital and asked me to pass this news on to the emperor." Eunuch Chen's face stiffened when he heard that. He strode into the royal study and told the emperor the news. After hearing this, the emperor's hand jolted, and half of the approved memorials in his hand snapped. He hurriedly stood up and asked, "Are you sure? It was Lord Jiyu who discovered it." He was afraid of spreading the disease into the palace, so he didn't dare to come in. Eunuch Chen replied. The emperor was very touched when he heard that. At the same time, he believed in Jiyu Chengru's medical skills, so he panicked even more. He ordered, "Call all the imperial physicians on duty in the Imperial Academy of Medicine over. In addition, inform the people in the palace that they can only leave and not enter. No one is allowed to enter the back of the palace. Also, inform the empress to monitor the back. From today onward, I will not enter there until the epidemic ends." "Yes, I'll make the arrangements now. How should we go back to Lord Jiyu?" Eunuch Chen asked. "Let him wait for a while. We'll talk after seeing the imperial physicians." "Yes." Eunuch Chen responded and immediately passed down the orders to the eunuchs beside him. When the people from the Imperial Academy of Medicine received the news, they were all so scared that their legs went weak. However, they still ran to the royal study one by one. "Tell me first, have any of you ever been infected with smallpox?" The emperor asked directly when he saw them enter. After the imperial physicians heard this, they looked at each other and finally shook their heads. After all, it had been a long time since smallpox had been cited. "Your Majesty, Lord Jiyu has just turned 20. Could it be that he has made the wrong diagnosis?" Principal Ju looked up at the emperor. "Why don't you go out and confirm it?" the emperor asked. Principal Ju immediately broke out in a cold sweat. However, He also knew this was not the time to chicken out. This was also an opportunity to make contributions. I'm willing to go and share the emperor's worries. Go, but it won't be easy to come back in after leaving the palace. You can discuss it with Jiyu Chungrue. If it's confirmed to be smallpox, submit a detailed memorial to me as soon as possible. Chapter 770 Smallpox 3, Yes. Principal Ju responded and turned around to leave. The emperor looked at the remaining 4 imperial physicians and said, "Send a message to your families. Do not leave the palace unless there is something important." Yes. The 4 responded and turned around to return to the Imperial Academy of Medicine. The emperor then began to approve the memorials. When Principal Ju came out, he saw Jiyu Chungrue and stepped forward to greet him with cupped fists. "Greetings. You're here to confirm the condition, right? Follow me." After Jiyu Chungrue finished greeting him, he brought him to the hospital. He walked to a side courtyard and said, "There's a family of 3 inside. They're all infected with smallpox. Be careful when you go in." "All right." Principal Ju nodded and walked in. He saw the people guarding outside, the lime powder scattered on the ground, and the choking smell of disinfectant in the space. He was impressed with Jiyu Chungrue. At the same time, he became even more vigilant. After entering the house, the smell of disinfectant became even more potent. A 5 or 6-year-old girl squatted by the window and looked outside with a longing expression. At the same time, he realized that there were already several pustules on her face. "Young lady, don't move. Let Grandpa take a look at you." The little girl was frightened by him. However, she quickly asked with anticipation, "Grandpa, can you cure my illness?" "Yes, but Grandpa has to see it to treat it." The little girl nodded and stood there obediently. Principal Ju dared not stand before her to examine her but stood beside her. At the same time, he asked about the symptoms of the little girl and her family. In the end, he confirmed that it was really smallpox. He was a little flustered. After comforting the girl, he immediately turned around and ran out. When he reached the exit, the gatekeeper took a broom and sprinkled disinfectant on his body. Principal Ju was stunned for a moment. He stood there obediently and waited. Finally, he asked for some disinfectant and rubbed his hands before leaving the small courtyard. He walked to Jiyu Chungrue, who was not far away. "It's smallpox. Did you find anyone else with the same symptoms?" "Not yet. I've asked them about their whereabouts. Fortunately, Thief only stayed in Northern City, so what we need to do now is seal the city as soon as possible. The authority required is too great, so I can't make the decision. That was why I went to look for the emperor." "All right, let's think of a complete plan as soon as possible and present it to the emperor. He's waiting for our memorial. Follow me." Jiyu Chungrue nodded and brought him to his office. The 2 of them discussed for almost 2 hours and finally wrote a temporary implementation plan. They quickly presented it to the emperor. After the emperor had the memorial disinfected, he opened it and read it seriously. There were 3 main points. First, close down the entire capital, even the docks and all the passages out of the capital. Second, implement regional quarantine to prevent widespread infection. Third, and most importantly, find the source of the infection as soon as possible. Finally, there was the treatment plan, and the prescriptions for each stage were attached. It was written in detail and concisely. After reading it, the emperor also confirmed that Jiyu Chungrue was the leader of this plan. Because many of the ideas were novel and bold. He smiled and began to pass out the imperial edicts one by one. After he was done with his work, the retired emperor walked in with the support of Eunuch Li. "Father, why are you here?" The emperor hurriedly went forward and helped the retired emperor sit down. I heard rumors from the palace that smallpox was discovered in the capital, so I came to ask if it's true." "Yes, Jiyu Chungrue and Principal Ju have confirmed it." Chapter 771 Smallpox 4. The retired emperor's expression froze. "The last time smallpox appeared in the capital was when I was 5 years old. It spread quickly, and very few people survived. In my opinion, it's better to quickly send your wives to a manor to hide. Take a look at the memorial they submitted first. After the emperor finished speaking, he handed the memorial to his father. In other words, there's no place that's completely safe right now. After the retired emperor finished reading it, he seriously pondered for a moment. Yes, the northern part of the capital is the most dangerous place right now. Let's wait quietly for a few days and see if we can control it. Alright, let's give it 7 days. If you can't control it after 7 days, send the masters of the harem out to hide. Alright. The emperor replied. After that, the retired emperor took the initiative to stay in the side hall. How could he be at ease waiting at the back for such a crucial matter? At the same time, the imperial edict was issued, and teams of soldiers and imperial guards were dispatched. Very quickly, the capital was isolated and supervised by districts. At the same time, Lord Yang and Yang Jiwu also sent out their subordinates to surround the entire capital. After Jiyu Chungrue and Principal Ju sent letters to their families, they went straight to Northern City. They brought all the doctors to Northern City and began providing free medical treatment to find the source of the infection. Damn it! Sun Wenhao cursed after receiving the news at a manor on a western mountain. Why can't the emperor play his cards according to the rules? Second master, someone said, I heard that the royal guards have left the palace. The defense of the palace must be at its weakest now. Why don't we send people to barge our way into the palace? Won't it be more intimidating this way? What do you know? The emperor is not stupid. No matter what, he will leave backup to guard him. Moreover, the royal guards did not leave the city. They could rush back quickly. At that time, we will become turtles in a jar. So we just wait. Yes. Since he won't send people out, let's just wait for the smallpox to enter the palace. I don't think it will take long. Sun Wenhao laughed sinisterly. After Ju Ying learned that Jiyu Chungrue would not be back for a while, she had no choice but to send someone to send him clothes, toiletries, masks, gloves, and other items. After Jiyu Chungrue received the things, he did not hog the masks and gloves. Instead, he gave one to every doctor, including Principal Ju. Principal Ju looked at the things in his hands and felt complicated because he had only just realized that his abandoned daughter was genuinely outstanding. The son-in-law he found was not bad either. He did not seem inferior to him in terms of medical skills. Jiyu Chungrue didn't know what he was thinking. He followed the trail of new patients, combined it with the trail of the family of 3 from before, and finally found an intersection. In a small tavern. Jiyu Chungrue immediately brought his men to look around. When he found out a waiter was sick and asked for leave, he immediately rushed to the waiter's house. Only then did he realize that the waiter had lived alone and died at home. Moreover, he could no longer see his original appearance because of the pustules on his body. Jiyu Chungrue quickly looked at the manager at the side and asked, "Is he your original employee or did you hire him recently?" "A recent recruit, and only about a month." At this point, the manager seemed to have realized something. He kneeled and said, Sir, this has nothing to do with me. I really don't know anything. Take everyone in the tavern away and quarantine them." After Jiyu Chungrue finished speaking, he left and asked someone to bring 2 big bags of lime powder. He scattered the powder everywhere around the courtyard and wrapped the corpse in a blanket. Then, he found a place to burn it. Jiyu Chungrue went into the house personally and did a spot check. Unfortunately, he did not find anything useful. Chapter 772 Smallpox 5. Jiyu Chungrue asked the neighbors. The person's name was Sun Liang, and he had been working as a clerk in the grain store. After the disaster, he was the only one left in the house. He was fired because he drank too much before the new year and delayed a significant business deal. He had been working part-time recently and only found a job at a tavern a few days ago. Jiyu Chungrue saw that an auntie knew the deceased well, and he asked, "Have you seen anyone with him recently?" "I'm really not sure about that, but he has a few friends who often drink with him." "Why don't you ask them? Perhaps they might know." "Thank you. I'll have to trouble you to point the way." The auntie did not wait and immediately led the soldiers to search for them. Soon, 3 people were found. One of them was dead, and although the other 2 were not dead, they were already unconscious. After asking around, they were all single. Ji Chungrui immediately brought in more men to deal with the dead bodies. As for the 2 people who were still alive, they were carefully disinfected and quarantined. He found the place where the 3 of them worked. It was a grain shop and a carpenter shop. The people in the carpenter's shop were fine. They were still alive and well, but they were still quarantined. After that, Ji Chungrui brought his men to the grain shop. However, it was empty. When they reached the grain shop manager's house, they found that the manager was already dead. After asking the neighbors, he learned that the manager's family had all returned to their hometown a month ago. The manager had mentioned that since his shop did not make money, he was selling the shop to return to his hometown. When Ji Chungrui heard this, he immediately sent someone to the government to investigate the manager's background. If he hadn't investigated, he wouldn't have known the origin. He was shocked. This grain shop and manager originally belonged to the Marquis of Dingan. But after the disaster, the manager bought the shop from the Marquis of Dingan and started his own business. Ji Chungrui could not help but mutter. Could it be that King Hui had returned and that he had deliberately started this epidemic? He immediately told the emperor his findings. After the emperor received the news, he was shocked. What should have come is finally here. Fortunately, I didn't send my wives out to hide. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have fallen into a trap. After that, he gave Ji Chungrui his gold medal and gave him full authority to handle this matter. After Ji Chungrui received the gold medal, everything became more convenient. He arranged for all the districts in the capital to go under lockdown and started a door-to-door check to eliminate hidden dangers. After he was done for the day, he took off his gloves and had a meal. He grabbed the pendant hanging around his neck and told Zhu Ying about his suspicion of this epidemic. He also asked her to help investigate and see if she could find the whereabouts of King Hui and the others. After Zhu Ying received the news that night, she huffed, as expected of King Hui. His methods are so cruel and ruthless. He doesn't take human lives seriously. Fortunately, he did not have the destiny to be the emperor, or else the country would definitely suffer. After that, she searched the entire capital. After 4 hours, she finally found Sun Wenhao and his group in the village in the western suburbs. There weren't many people, only about 100 or so. However, looking at the murderous look on their faces, it seemed that they were all fugitives. What puzzled her was that she actually saw through his disguise. It seemed the reason she couldn't find King Hui last time was that he had escaped quickly, not because she had been careless. After she found him, she glanced at Ji Chungrui. Seeing that he was sleeping soundly, she did not disturb him. She only told him the results after she had breakfast with Guogua the next day. On the other end, Ji Chungrui received the news from Zhu Ying and had a headache. He thought that those people would be in the capital, not in a manor. What should he do now? The problem was that he could not start a massive search. If he let them escape, it would be difficult to catch them again. This news must not be leaked. Chapter 773 Smallpox, 6, Dr. Gu, the 2 people who were quarantined yesterday have woken up. One of them wanted to hit the wall and commit suicide, but he failed because of his fever. Oh, so he's guilty. Ji Chungrui immediately stood up after he finished speaking. This was an excellent opportunity that had come knocking on his door. He had to interrogate it properly. Even if they couldn't find anything, they just needed him alive. After that, he did not even bother to finish his breakfast. After washing up, he took his vaccine and hid the needle. He put on the mask and gloves that he had cleaned last night and went over to look for him. When he saw the person who was tied up, he stepped forward and said, "You're so eager to die, and that means you must know something. As long as you tell me, I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, you can only stay and be my test subject." When Ji Chungrui said this, he looked at his confused expression and paused. "You don't know what a test subject is? What about a poison tester?" Every doctor hopes to have a poison tester so that they can research medicine faster. The man looked at him in fear. Although he had never seen a poison tester before, he had heard many people mention it. It was said that some poison testers were tortured to the point where they no longer looked like humans. The key was that none of them could live long. It just so happens that I've been researching a type of poison recently. It's said that if this poison gets to you, you'll be as cold as ice every night, especially on a full moon. It's okay. Don't say anything. I'll go get it now. After Ji Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. The man subconsciously thought of the snow disaster. He was almost frozen to death at that time, and he did not want to live that kind of cold life again. Don't. I'll talk. Remember, if there's a lie, I'll give you 10% of that poison. No, I won't. About a month ago, our manager brought back a piece of clothing in a panic. He put it on the next day and said that he was going to sell the shop and return to his hometown. He had even sent his family back. After a few days, he was down with a high fever. The two of us would persuade him to find a doctor quickly. He ignored us, and he also started to drink. One night, after the two of us had had a drink, he told us the truth. He had smallpox, and there was no cure. When I heard that, my heart trembled. I asked curiously, "You haven't seen a doctor before. How do you know?" The manager said that the clothes he had brought back previously were from someone with smallpox. It was the second son of the Marquis of Dingan who had captured his family and forced him to do this in order to spread smallpox. At that time, I was scared silly. I originally wanted to tell the officials, but the manager suddenly threatened me. He claimed that he would say that I did all of this, that he would stuff the clothes into my house, and that he would get the shop assistant to testify for him. Think about it, which shop assistant would dare to oppose the manager? I'm just afraid. So, I didn't dare say anything, but I was also depressed. I gathered a few brothers who were on good terms with me and started drinking. At that time, I finally understood the manager's helplessness. After the items in the shop were quickly sold out, everyone dispersed, and we returned home. I remember that at that time, the manager's face had already started to grow pustules, so I was so scared that I didn't even dare to ask for my salary. Who would have thought that I would also be infected? But I didn't touch him. I didn't even dare touch his things. Why was I still infected? Chapter 774 Smallpox 7. That person even started to sob. Not only can it be transmitted through contact, but it can also be transmitted through saliva and breathing. That's why it's so terrifying. Ji Chungrui replied. That, I senti it. That's right. Did the grain shop deal with anyone from outside the capital? Not really. The shop is small, so it mainly sells to nearby residents. By the way, have you heard the manager mention where the Marquis of Dingan's second son is hiding? No, he probably doesn't know either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been threatened. All right, cooperate with our treatment. You might be able to survive. After Ji Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. After disinfecting himself, he sent a memorial to the emperor and told him everything he had found. After the emperor received the news, he immediately informed Xiao Heng and Yang Jiwu to bring people out of the city to search for Sun Wenhao and his group. As long as they found them, they would be killed without mercy. After the two of them received the order, they immediately gathered their troops and set off, especially the manor related to the Marquis of Dingan. On the other end, Zhu Ying had been paying attention to Ji Chungrui. After receiving the confession, she finally understood the meaning behind Sun Wenhao's words. Therefore, she took advantage of when they gathered for lunch to drug their wine. She quietly found the manager's family and let them out. After the manager's family escaped, they directly reported to the nearby officials that they had been kidnapped. Soon, Yang Jiwu and Xiao Heng also received the news and rushed to the manor to arrest them. Xiao Heng saw the familiar disguise and immediately removed it from Sun Wenhao's face. After confirming that it was him, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief and brought them back to the capital. After the emperor received the letter, he heaved a sigh of relief. He asked Xiao Heng to interrogate him. Where exactly did the smallpox outbreak happen? Otherwise, Sun Wenhao wouldn't have gotten clothes with the smallpox virus. After confirming that the smallpox was found in a small village on the northern continent and had been cured, the emperor finally heaved a sigh of relief. After the matter was clarified, the next step was treatment. Zhu Ying did not pay attention to it anymore. Soon, more and more people in Northern City fell ill. Fortunately, it did not spread out of the capital. With the cooperation of Jiyu Chungrui and Principal Zhu, the epidemic was quickly controlled and eliminated. Even if Principal Zhu was indignant when they separated, he had to admit that Jiyu Chengrui's control of the epidemic was much better than his. The key was that he was swift and decisive in his execution. There was no talk of human feelings. He had a rare talent. What made him even more depressed was that Jiyu Chengrui's medical skills seemed to be higher than his, even far surpassing his son. Therefore, when they parted ways, he invited him with great reluctance. Through this epidemic, I realized that we have a tacit understanding. In the future, when you have time, come over to my house. We can also discuss medical skills there. Jiyu Chungrui looked at Principal Zhu's kind expression. Not only did he not have a good impression of him, but he was instead filled with disgust. This person was too materialistic, so much so that it made one's heart turn cold. However, Zhu Ying was still his daughter, so there was no need to make things too ugly. He said, "You should come to the hospital when you have time. There are many patients here. We can have a good discussion." Although Principal Zhu was a little uncomfortable, he still nodded. "All right, I'll come over when there's an opportunity." The next day, after the morning court session, the two made a report to the emperor, which also meant that the epidemic had ended. Chapter 775. A proposal. The emperor nodded his head in satisfaction after hearing this. Then, he rewarded each of them with 10,000 taels of silver. Then, he said, "Go back and study it carefully. See if you can stop smallpox as a whole. Otherwise, once it erupts, it will be a disaster that is no smaller than a natural disaster." Hearing him say this, Jiyu Chungrui suddenly thought of cowpox. He might as well take the opportunity to suggest this so that it does not happen again. "I have an idea, but it's not mature yet." "Oh, tell me." After the emperor finished speaking, he looked at him expectantly. "I discovered that smallpox will become weaker and weaker as it spreads. For example, this time, the first few people who were infected with smallpox were in a much more severe condition, and the time needed to treat them was also much longer. Moreover, any smallpox transmitted through young adults would accelerate the weakening of the smallpox's toxicity. Therefore, I want to use strong cows and horses to test if the sickness extracted from them can be weaker. If that is the case, could we plant this weakened smallpox into a human body? After all, you would never get smallpox again after being infected once. Even if it doesn't work, it will be relatively simple to treat." The emperor looked thoughtfully at Principal Zhu, who was standing in a daze. "Principal Zhu, you were in the epidemic center. What do you think?" Principal Zhu replied, replying to the emperor, "I really didn't notice. However, the people who were infected later did recover faster. The pustules were also reduced, so I think we can try it." At the same time, he was annoyed. Why didn't he observe carefully? Otherwise, this massive credit would have been his. The emperor's eyes lit up when he heard that. He looked at Jiyu Chungrui and said, "I'll leave this matter to you, Chungrui. If there's anything you need, just let me know. Go back and accompany your wife. We'll officially start in 3 days." "Yes." Jiyu Chungrui nodded. After that, he raised his request, mainly for the venue and the people. He could settle the rest himself. "If there's anything you need help with, just let me know," Principal Zhu asked after leaving the royal study. "Definitely." Jiyu Chungrui nodded, bade farewell, and went home. After returning home, he changed her clothes and bathed in mugwort leaves before walking to the main courtyard. When he entered, he saw Guogua crawling on the thin blanket. He went forward and picked her up. "Guogua, did you miss Dad?" Guogua looked at him with a confused expression and turned to look at Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin was about to take her when Jiyu Chungrui hugged her and asked, "Where's mistress?" She went to the restaurant and said she would return by noon. "Okay, you can go down. I'll play with Guogua for a while. Yes, if there's anything, please call me." After saying that, Mrs. Lin left and went straight to the east wing. Jiyu Chungrui lifted Guogua up high and examined her carefully. "Our Guogua is really getting more and more beautiful. She doesn't even remember her dad anymore." "Ah, Guogua replied impatiently. At the same time, the saliva in her mouth fell and landed on Jiyu Chengrui's face. Guogua chuckled. "You little rascal, you're so happy just because you did something bad." After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he pulled her into his arms and wiped his face with a handkerchief beside him. He carried her out of the house. As soon as he stepped out of the door, Guogua was overjoyed. She stretched out her arm and pointed the way. Finally, she arrived at the back garden. When Jiyu Chungrui saw this, he was elated. How could he not be happy when she was an 8-month-old child who knew the way? His daughter was the smartest. Chapter 776. Father and Daughter Getting Along. Fu. Guogua pointed at a black and gold butterfly and kept on pointing at it. Her big eyes were fixed on the butterfly, and she couldn't take her eyes off it. Jiyu Chungrui saw this and walked over with her in his arms. He even grabbed her arm and let her grab it herself. However, butterflies were not so easy to catch. It flew away as soon as they approached. After 4 or 5 stops, Guogua was a little discouraged, even a little angry. The last time, without Jiyu Chungrui needing to do anything, she directly clawed at the flower. She grabbed a handful of pollen, but the butterfly ran away and flew out of the garden. Guogua pointed in the direction the butterfly had escaped in and wanted to continue to chase after it. Jiyu Chungrui said, "It flew away. You scratched the little butterfly." After saying that, he even showed her little paws to let her see the yellow powder on her hands. Guogua scratched her hands in confusion, but she still pointed in the direction where the butterfly had flown. Jiyu Chungrui looked at her stubborn look and felt a headache. He was afraid that she would cry if she was unhappy. He carried her and walked forward. Guogua saw that he was not chasing after the butterfly and immediately snorted in dissatisfaction. Perhaps she was unfamiliar with him, but she did not make a fuss. Instead, she stared at him with her big eyes. Jiyu Chungrui was getting a little sheepish with her stare. In the end, he brought her to the small pond to look at goldfish. After 2 to 3 years of careful rearing, the fish in the pond not only increased a lot but also grew a lot bigger. Each fish looked fat and delicious. Guogua was immediately attracted by the goldfish. She pointed at the goldfish and began to cry out. "Go get some fish food." Jiyu Chungrui raised his head and said to a servant not far away. "Yes." The servant responded and immediately ran away. Soon, he brought over some fish food that had been prepared earlier. After Jiyu Chungrui took it, he broke off a small piece and threw it into the water. In an instant, the fish gathered together and formed a red lump. After a moment, not even a powder was left behind. Guogua saw that the fish had run away and immediately grabbed the pancake in his hand. Jiyu Chungrui broke some off, crushed it into small pieces, and placed it in her tiny hand. "You can feed it yourself." Guogua immediately threw the fish food into the water with a smile. Although her small hand missed, some fish food still fell into the pond, immediately attracting a group of fish to fight for it. Guogua immediately clapped her hands and laughed. After that, they sat by the pond and began to feed the fish. However, in less than 15 minutes, Guogua whined and wanted to go back. Jiyu Chungrui was happy to see this. He crushed the remaining fish food and sprinkled it into the water before carrying her back to the main courtyard. After entering the house, he placed her on the ground, poured her a glass of water, and began to feed her. However, Guogua was not in the mood to drink water. Instead, she scratched her body with her tiny hands, looking like she was about to cry. Jiyu Chungrui also noticed the red spots on her little hand. He grabbed her little hand and rubbed it. After confirming that it was a mosquito bite, he looked guilty. He had been so focused on playing with her that he had completely forgotten about the mosquitoes. He carried her back to the bedroom and took off her clothes. As expected, her small body was covered in red spots from being bitten by mosquitoes. He immediately searched the room and found some cream he had made himself and applied it to her body. He helped her put her clothes back on, and only then did Guogua stop scratching. Jiyu Chungrue immediately fed her some water and brought her to play around the house. Gradually, the father and daughter got along more and more harmoniously. When Ju Ying returned, she had just entered the main courtyard when she heard the sound of them fooling around. Chapter 777. Leaving after entering the house, she saw Guogua rolling around laughing. She went up to them and scolded them. Jiyu Chungrue, to think that you're a doctor. Aren't you afraid that she'll get a headache from rolling around? Jiyu Chungrue turned his head and saw her. His expression froze as he asked, "You're back?" Ju Ying did not scold him anymore. Instead, she picked up Guogua and asked, "Has the epidemic been dealt with?" Jiyu Chungrue sat up and tidied his clothes. "Other than the virus I left behind, the rest are all destroyed. However, I proposed using cowpox to build immunity, so we'll have to leave for another 2 to 3 months after 3 days. Although Ju Ying was reluctant to see him leave, she knew that this was a big deal. She could only answer, "All right. Prepare well in the next 2 days. Bring everything that might be needed." "I will. By the way, Dr. Feng is keeping an eye on the clinic. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to go and take a look from time to time." "Got it." At this point, Ju Ying looked at Guogua, who was lying obediently on her shoulder and panting. She glared at him and huffed, "Look at how tired she is. You stay here for a while. I have to wipe Guogua down." After saying that, she carried Guogua into her room and entered her interspace. She redded in some warm water and planned to give Guogua a bath. When she saw the mosquito bite marks on Guoguo's body, she knew without a doubt that it was Jiyu Chungrue who did it. Because Mrs. Lin was a careful person, even if she brought Guogua out, she would bring an anti-mosquito sachet. "Silly girl, do you feel itchy?" Ju Ying played with her head and asked. "Ah." Guogua slapped her hand away in frustration and rubbed her eyes. Ju Ying knew that Guogua was sleepy, so she didn't delay any longer. She quickly washed her and applied the ointment again. She quickly changed her into a set of clean clothes, carried her out of her interspace, and placed her on her bed. As soon as Guogua was placed on the bed, she fell asleep. Ju Ying covered her with a thin blanket and left the room. Jiyu Chungrue, who was drinking tea, saw her coming out. He immediately stood up and suggested, "What do you want to eat for lunch? I'll make it." "You must be feeling guilty." Ju Ying walked over and teased, "I was so excited to see my daughter that I forgot about mosquitoes." Jiyu Chungrue laughed dryly. After saying that, he poured her a cup of tea. "Be careful in the future. Children's skin is tender, and their skin attracts mosquitoes the most. Don't worry, I'll definitely remember it." Ju Ying looked at his sheepish appearance and did not say anything more. Instead, she asked, "Do you know where you're going this time?" "If my guess is correct, the Emperor will provide us a remote manor. Bring some medicine to kill mosquitoes and flies, just in case." "All right." For the next 2 days, Jiyu Chungrue went to the clinic for half a day, accompanied his family for the remaining half day, and made some mosquito repellent medicine at night. At the same time, Ju Ying also prepared 4 sets of summer clothes, a thin quilt, some toiletries, beef jerky, and the silver notes that the Emperor rewarded him this time. On the morning of the 4th day, Guard Chu brought a group of people to pick up Jiyu Chungrue and set off to a remote manor. Other than food, the manor also arranged for some strong cattle and horses, as well as prisoners. Jiyu Chungrue didn't waste any more time. After making the arrangements, he distributed the mosquito repellent he had brought and instructed Guard Chu to take care of his protection. He personally picked a cow and a horse and began his experiment. After Jiyu Chungrue left, Ju Ying handed the task of inspecting the manor and shops to Nyo Fugue. She only took the time to visit the clinic. Only if there were any troublesome patients would she let Ji-yu Chungrue know. Chapter 778. Passing on the news in the blink of an eye. 2 months had passed, and it was the middle of the day. The weather was so stuffy that people were annoyed, and Guogua kept crying. During the day, Ju Ying did not dare to bring her into the space, so she decided to stay in to avoid the heat. One day, Ju Ying and the others were ready to set off when Mingyu rushed over with her son, Zhuang. Ju Ying saw that her expression was not right. She welcomed her into the house and asked, "What's wrong? Did you two quarrel? Can't it be something else? I don't owe you money." Mingyu rolled her eyes at her. She waved her hand and chased out all the irrelevant people in the room before saying, "I'm afraid the retired emperor is in trouble. Warning asked my father to help pass a message. If there's any celebratory event you want to do, hurry up and get it done." How could that be? Wasn't everything fine before? No idea. Someone threw a large amount of ice into the retired emperor's bedroom, and he fell sick from the cold overnight. I heard that he even choked on his lungs. You know that the retired emperor is most afraid of catching a cold at this moment. I heard from my father that he's coughing so much that he can't even speak, and every time he coughs, there's blood. Wait, this is basically murder. Have they found out who did it? After finding out about a little eunuch, the clues were cut off. I'm afraid it won't be easy to investigate further. Ju Ying did not know what to say after hearing this. After all, the retired emperor had offended many people during his reign, so investigating this was difficult. But one thing was for sure, the palace was filled with dirt. After that, the two of them chatted for a while. When Mingyu learned that Ju Ying was going to the manor, she said, "Let's go together. We can have company then." "All right, pack up quickly. We'll set off early tomorrow morning." "No problem, it's a deal." After Mingyu finished speaking, she brought her son back to pack her things in a hurry. Meanwhile, Ju Ying put down Guogua and went out with some food. She went to second Uncle Gus' house in West City. Mrs. Yarrow saw her enter, paused, and greeted her with a smile. "Yinga, you're here. Come in and take a seat." "Thanks," Ju Ying replied. After handing the food to her, she followed her into the house. "I heard that you opened a pastry shop in Northern City. How's business?" "It's not bad, as we mainly sell common treats. Now, mung bean cakes are in short supply every day." "That's good. With a living, things will slowly get better." "Oh, right, where's Zicheong?" Ju Ying asked. "She's helping out in the shop. She left me at home to take care of the 2 children." Has her pre-wedding rites been completed? It has. Did something happen? Mrs. Yarrow asked. Zicheong is 17 now, right? Yes, she's been in mourning for your grandmother for a year. That's why her wedding was delayed. Hold her wedding ceremony as soon as possible, just in case. What happened? I heard that the retired emperor is sick. Mrs. Yarrow was shocked after hearing this and swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. This matter could not be spread simply. Ju Ying was quite satisfied. She stood up and said, "Guogua is still at home. I'll go back now." "Wait. It's already noon. Why don't you have a meal before you leave?" "No, Guogua won't eat properly if I don't go back." "Thank you for the offer." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she stood up and walked out. The moment she left, Mrs. Yarrow started to panic. She had also heard a little about the retired emperor's situation. His body simply couldn't take it anymore. What if? It seemed that this marriage had to be held as soon as possible. The key was that the 2 of them were not young anymore. Who knew what would happen if they kept mourning for another 3 years? Chapter 779. Summer escape. After picking up Shoro Jie from school at night and letting him look after her younger brother, Xiao Hao, she went to Qin Wu's house at the right time and told him about the matter. The next day, Qin Wu deliberately checked, but he found nothing. However, when he heard that the marriage of the princess of King Xian's family had been brought forward, Qin Wu immediately realized that this matter might be true. Therefore, He immediately found a matchmaker and brought forward the wedding 10 days later. After receiving the news, Mrs. Yao immediately prepared a dowry for Jiyu Zichong. On the other end, Ju Ying and Mingyu brought their children to the largest manor under her name, the breeding farm she had taken over from King Hui. The manor was massive. There was no smell as the main courtyard was far away from the breeding area. Mingyu looked at the luxurious two-door courtyard in front of her. As expected of the rich and imposing King Hui, this courtyard is not big, but the cost is definitely extravagant. Yeah, and the interior has been renovated. You can live in comfort. After Ju Ying finished speaking, she carried Guogua toward the main courtyard. When Mingyu saw this, she immediately followed. Because no man was around, they stayed in the east and west rooms, respectively. As soon as they unpacked, the head of the manor, Head He, came over. Ju Ying carried Guogua to the front. "Greetings, mistress." Head He immediately bowed when he saw her coming out. "Please, get up. There's no need to be so polite. Is everything all right in the manor?" "It's going well. I was just about to tell you that the early maturing peaches and plums are about to ripen. Do you think we can pick them?" "That's right. It's almost the season. You can start looking for people now. Remember to pick them before they are fully ripened. Especially the peaches. Pick them when they're 80% ripe, or they won't be able to be stored until they are sold." "I will remember it." "Oh, right, and those livestock. It's too hot now, so you must pay attention to hygiene and prevent mosquitoes and flies. Also, get more dandelions, honeysuckles, and other heat-clearing and detoxifying medicines to prevent any sickness. I'll make the arrangements now. Go. We will stay at the manor for a few days. Get someone to send some fresh vegetables and meat over every day." "Yes." He Yuan responded and turned to leave. Ju Ying returned to her room. After a while, He Yuan's wife came over with 2 servant girls, a basket of coal, a chicken, some eggs, and a carp. In the evening, Ju Ying cooked dinner personally. She readied steamed egg custard for the 2 children, sweet and sour fish, chicken stewed with mushrooms, and garlic and coal. After dinner, she smoked out the mosquitoes in the yard and played with the 2 children. The 2 children were quite happy to play together. Mingyu smiled when she saw this. "Whoa, it's much cooler in this manor. At least there's a little breeze. I think I can sleep soundly at night. Indeed, there are too many people in the capital, making it hot. It's much better when we are here. But don't open the curtains at night. The wind from the mountain is still quite wild. It'll be troublesome if you catch a cold. I'll remember it. By the way, have you seen Warning recently?" "I have. Every time I visit the palace to visit Empress Dowager, I will see her. She complained more than once that you hadn't visited her in 3 to 4 months. Maybe after the new year, as Chungrue is busy every day. I had to care for Guogua, so I don't have the time. I think you're just lazy and think the palace has too many rules." "Oh, don't blow my cover. But it is part of the truth. In the past, Guogua was still young and could be taken care of by a nanny. Now that she's older, she's very clingy. She wouldn't eat properly without me." Chapter 780 Gifts. Mingyu didn't say anything after hearing that. Zhuang had been quite clingy ever since he started to recognize people, which could be a result of her feeding him personally. However, this feeling of being needed was not bad. The next morning, Ju Ying and Mingyu went out for a jog around the manor. After confirming that the place was in line with their standards, Ju Ying turned her head and asked, "Mingyu, do you want to go up the mountain to take a look?" "Of course. I heard the peaches are ripe, so I want to bring 2 back for the 2 children to try." Mingyu nodded. When they arrived at the mountain, Ju Ying found that the peaches and plums were ready to be picked, and they were not small. She picked the best peaches on the treetops, and she picked more than 10. After descending the mountain, Mingyu brought the peaches back to the main courtyard. Ju Ying went to the manor and asked Head He to organize people to pick the rest of them quickly. In the afternoon, Ju Ying picked out a few baskets of the best peaches in color and size. She carefully packed it and loaded a large amount of ice into the carriage, asking Shiju to send the fruits into the palace. The rest were divided into 3 grades. The first grade fruits were carefully placed in baskets, ready to be sold to wealthy families. The second grade ones were sold to the commoner district. The remaining third grade ones were sold at the nearby markets. If they couldn't be sold out, they were sent to restaurants to be made into smoothies and fruit platters. However, Ju Ying received a letter from Mrs. Yarrow just after giving instructions. She could only ask Mingyu, "Do you want to stay here for a few more days or return to the capital together? Let's go back together. There are many things to do at home. It's already very good to take a break and stay here for a few days." Mingyu replied. Ju Ying felt a tinge of guilt in her heart. Since she opened the cake shop, Ju Huaiming has been busier than before. Moreover, he was now helping Sun Hongliang open up noodle shops everywhere. After arriving in the capital, Mingyu got someone to send over a piece of silver jewelry as a wedding gift for Jiyu Ziqiong. When it was Ju Ying's turn, she was a little troubled because her wedding gift to Jiyu Ziqiu and Jiyu Zishan was too simple back then. If she gave Jiyu Ziqiong too much now, Mrs. Yarrow and Mrs. Liu would feel uncomfortable. However, it would not match their current status if it were too simple. She thought of the 1-month-old gift they had given Guoguo. After much consideration, she gave her 2 batches of good fabric and a set of gold jewelry. The monetary gift was set at 100 taels, so Mrs. Yarrow would not complain. That afternoon, Ju Ying sent the things over. As expected, Mrs. Yarrow did not say anything on account of the 100 taels of silver. Mrs. Huang even warmly invited her to sit down and drink tea. "When did Auntie Huang come over?" asked Ju Ying. "Yesterday. It was a little rushed." "Indeed. Where are second uncle and the others?" "They are entertaining a few relatives tomorrow. They've gone to buy things separately. There are plenty of things in the restaurant. If you lack anything, let me know in advance. I'll get them to bring some." "All right. By the way, I made 2 sets of clothes for Guoguo. You can take them back." After speaking, Mrs. Huang returned to her room and took out 2 sets of tiny clothes. The clothes were a doudou and shorts. The red doudou had a black puppy embroidered, and the green shorts had vines embroidered. It was a beautiful match. After chatting for a while, Mr. Jiyu and the others rushed back. When they saw her, Mr. Jiyu sat down and asked, "Ju Ying, will Chungrui be back tomorrow?" Chapter 781 The Retired Emperor's Death. I'm afraid not. Besides, he went to study smallpox. He can't come over for everyone's safety, even if he returns. If there's anything, just look for me. Chungrui has done great things that will last for thousands of years. If he can't come back, then so be it. Don't we have Chengji, Chengye, and Chengshi? Second Uncle Jiyu said. It's just a little regretful. Mr. Jiyu replied dejectedly. To put it bluntly, he wanted to take this opportunity to have a good gathering with everyone, as he did not know when everyone would be able to get together again. Ju Ying then asked if they had prepared enough, and they returned after ordering everything. The next day, she brought Guoguo to help for a day. 3 days later, in the early morning, Ju Ying was still in a daze when she suddenly heard a series of bells ringing in the direction of the palace. She immediately woke up and spread out her divine sense to take a look. Only then did she know that it was the death bell signaling that the retired emperor had not survived and had passed away. The entire palace was in tears. The Empress Dowager had also fainted, and now the imperial physicians were about to treat her. Gaa. At this moment, Guoguo was also woken up by the noise. She kept hitting the railing of the small bed at her, looking anxious. Ju Ying quickly got up and carried her up. After letting her relieve herself, she carried her to the big bed. A moment later, Guoguo fell asleep after she had milk. As for Ju Ying, she couldn't fall asleep. According to the original owner's memory, the last time the Empress Dowager died, she was buried after 7 days. At that time, everyone in the capital maintained 7 days of mourning, and every family hung white lanterns. Moreover, Jiyu Chungrui was registered under Princess Pingyang's registry. Their family would definitely not be able to escape the mourning period. The key was that she had to eat vegetarian food for 49 days. Her restaurant. After Guogua fell asleep, she immediately woke Nyofugue up. She quickly asked him to prepare some white lanterns and cloth for mourning. At the same time, she sent someone to inform the manor that from today onward, no meat, including eggs, would be sent to the restaurant. In addition, the amount of tofu produced should be doubled. When they were all ready, the imperial edict from the palace had already been sent out. As expected, it was according to the standard of the last Empress Dowager's death. However, due to the weather this time, the funeral was changed to last for 3 days, and the mourning period was changed to 100 days. After the meal, the young eunuch who reported the funeral also came over to pass on the imperial edict, asking her to enter the palace as soon as possible to attend the funeral. Seeing this, Ju Ying instructed the people in the manor to look after Guogua. She changed into a silver-white dress and blue shoes and followed the young eunuch to the imperial palace. On the way, Ju Ying gave the young eunuch 100 taels of silver. If there are any taboos or rules, please enlighten me. No problem. Don't worry, madam. The eunuch took it and nodded. Then, he began to tell her. Ju Ying didn't think much of it after hearing. She followed him, picked up the mourning clothes, and found her seat. After entering the palace, Ju Ying followed him all the way to the palace where the retired emperor lived. It was also the place where the funeral was held. She went in and mourned with everyone. After that, Consort took her to the side and gave her a white silk to tie around her head. She gave her a linen robe and asked the palace maid to sew 2 pieces of white cloth onto her shoes quickly. In a while, you will follow beside Mingyu. Do whatever she does. Thank you for your advice, Princess Consort. What Princess Consort? Remember to call me Auntie. Don't forget that you are Ping Yang's daughter-in-law now. Don't let those old-fashioned people get a hold of that mistake. Consort said softly. Chapter 782 Assassin Yes, Third Aunt. Ju Ying quickly nodded. You're quite early. Mingyu walked over and said. Not really. I just followed the people of the palace. Wanning doesn't have to come over, does she? Ju Ying asked. Yes, she's a pregnant woman. She's afraid of bumping into someone, so she won't be asked to come over. However, Jiyu Chenglin will come over as in-laws. As soon as she finished speaking, Jiyu Chenglin walked in with a young eunuch. However, the two of them were not on the same side of the hall, so Ju Ying did not talk to him. Soon, the people from the royal family came over one after another. The two did not dare to chat and just sat beside each other and mourned. At this time, Ju Ying also saw the second prince from King Xiaoyao's family. The husband and wife both looked calm and spiritual. It was said that they had been in the south. This time, they came back to congratulate the emperor on his ascension. They did not expect to meet the retired emperor's death. Fortunately, the father and son saw each other for the last time. Of course, Ju Ying had also been keeping an eye on Guogua with her divine sense. As soon as Guogua made a fuss, she would send her a voice transmission. When Guogua heard her voice, other than looking around for her, she didn't make any more noise. Ju Ying had a simple lunch in the palace at noon and went home in the afternoon. The next day, with her experience, Ju Ying arrived 2 hours late when no one picked her up. On the third day, Ju Ying got up early and rushed to the palace for the burial. Then, under the escort of all the officials and relatives, the coffin was lifted away. Everyone only escorted the coffin about 10 miles out of the imperial city. The rest of the journey was taken care of by King Xian, his son, and the 7th prince. They escorted the coffin to the imperial mausoleum together with the royal guards. However, everyone still kowtowed 3 times in the direction of the coffin. When she returned, Ju Ying, who had spread out her divine sense, found that a person on a tree not far away was aiming at the emperor with a bow and arrow. She was shocked and shouted, "There's someone on the tree on the upper left." Everyone was stunned by her shouts. The guards immediately protected the emperor. The emperor also reacted in time and quickly pulled out the dagger at his waist. However, he was still a step too late. Just as Zhu Ying reminded them, the arrow in that person's hand had already shot over. Sun Miaoke, who was standing beside the emperor, turned around and blocked the emperor's path. The arrow directly hit her shoulder. The emperor was shocked. He hugged her and shouted, "Get him! I want to see his corpse even if he's dead." As soon as he finished speaking, other than the guards, the soldiers lined up on the street and also took action. The person on the tree obviously had no intention of escaping. He wanted to take poison to commit suicide, but Zhu Ying's spiritual sense attack struck him down. Soon, he was subdued by Guard Chu. Guard Chu quickly searched his body and confirmed that there was no poison on his body before bringing him to the emperor. "King En, take him to the prison of the Ministry of Justice and interrogate him personally." After the emperor finished speaking, he carried Sun Miaoke into the carriage and rushed to the palace. When Guard Chu saw this, he directly threw the assassin at King En and quickly chased after the emperor. King En took the men and brought a team of soldiers with him. He rushed to the Ministry of Justice to interrogate the assassin. When Grand Scholar Sun saw this, he also hurried to the imperial palace. The rest of the officials were disbanded, and each clan sent a representative into the palace to wait for news of Sun Miaoke. Zhu Ying hesitated for a moment before following them into the palace. When they arrived outside the Phoenix Palace, Zhu Ying looked at the palace maids running back and forth. She walked to Jiyu Wanning, who was guarding outside the palace. She asked, "What's the situation? Is it serious?" "I'm not sure. I heard that the arrow was poisoned." Jiyu Wanning replied in a solemn voice. At the same time, she was a little frustrated. To be honest, Sun Miaoke was a virtuous and kind woman. It would be difficult to meet someone like her in the future. Therefore, she did not want anything to happen to her. Chapter 783. The Empress' death. About 15 minutes later, the Emperor's furious roar suddenly rang out, followed by the imperial physician's pleas for mercy. Zhu Ying took a glance and found that Sun Miaoke was already dead. Moreover, her face and lips were black and blue. Without looking, she could guess that Sun Miaoke was dead. She died for the Emperor. When she thought of this, she felt a little uncomfortable. Soon, Eunuch Qian ran out and was stunned when he saw the people waiting outside. Then, he said with a pained expression, "The Empress has passed away." After saying that, he went to find someone to ring the death bell. Everyone immediately kneeled and cried, "No, that's impossible." The Grand Scholar Sun staggered and quickly ran into the room after he finished speaking. When he saw the Emperor kneeling in front of the bed and Qingdao lying on the bed, crying her heart out, his heart sank, and his mind buzzed. His body fell forward stiffly. Fortunately, a young eunuch saw the situation and quickly rushed over to his body. The little eunuch, who had been knocked into a daze, couldn't care less about his discomfort. He immediately shouted, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Save the Grand Scholar Sun!" After the Emperor heard this, he turned his head and saw the Grand Scholar Sun lying on the ground. He immediately asked the doctor, who was kneeling on the ground, to go over and treat him. When the few imperial physicians heard this, they immediately rushed over to save him. They knew that after the deaths of the retired emperor and the empress, the emperor's heart had reached its limit. If something happened to the Grand Scholar Sun, they would very likely face a catastrophe. Fortunately, the Grand Scholar Sun was just struck by grief. He would be fine after a good recuperation. After the emperor received the news, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he sent someone to arrange for Grand Scholar Sun to go to the side hall. He requested that Qingdao take out the phoenix seal and hand it to Jiyu Wanning. He then saw Consort Xian and stepped forward. "I'll have to trouble you to help Wanning with the Empress' funeral." "I obey your decree." Consort Xian quickly bowed. After that, she brought people into the house and first changed the Empress into her court clothes. Then, she tidied up her appearance and carried her to the door. The Emperor looked at Zhu Ying and asked, "You were the one who shouted at the city gate, right?" "Yes, at that time, I felt something dazzling. Then, I vaguely saw an arrow, so..." Zhu Ying lowered her head. "It's not your fault. If it's convenient, Go to the palace more often to accompany Warning. After the emperor finished speaking, he walked out tiredly. Zhu Ying looked at Jiyu Warning. The palace will be even more deserted in the future. Sister-in-law, you must come to the palace to accompany me in the future, Jiyu Warning pleaded. I will. You have to be careful, too. Zhu Ying replied. Because of the empress' death, she did not leave the palace. Instead, she accompanied Jiyu Warning with her task, helping her pass on a message and doing what she could. The others had just arrived home and had not even changed their clothes when the death bell rang again. They immediately rushed to the palace. On the other end, the Empress Dowager, who had just caught her breath, silently shed tears after receiving the letter. She asked the palace servants to bring the little princess over. At her age, there was nothing she could do now. She could only take care of the child. The empress had died in vain. In addition, there was also the retired emperor, so she was buried the next day. However, it was said that the emperor's imperial mausoleum had not been built yet, so Sun Miaoke could only be temporarily placed in the retired emperor's mausoleum. After the emperor's imperial mausoleum was built, she would be moved over. After the empress was buried smoothly, Zhu Ying and Jiyu Chenglin finally returned home. Sister-in-law, will my sister be in danger? Jiyu Chenglin turned his head and asked hesitatingly. Chapter 784. A warning. No, the emperor has already raised the vigilance to the highest level. Zhu Ying was stunned for a moment and shook her head. Moreover, she would be keeping an eye on them from now on. It was impossible for Jiyu Warning to be in danger. All right. Jiyu Chenglin replied absent-mindedly and did not say anything else. Zhu Ying advised, don't overthink it. The emperor won't let anything happen in the palace. You, on the other hand, have to be careful next. First, you can't eat meat or fish in school, not even eggs. I'll make some dried tofu for you so you won't starve. Secondly, the clothes you wear must be simple and elegant. Don't wear colorful clothes. Otherwise, if someone finds out, it will implicate your sister. Do you understand? I know. I will definitely be careful. Okay, go back. Your current mission is to study. Your cousin and I will take care of the rest. Yes, I will take my leave. Jiyu Chenglin turned around and walked out after saying that. Zhu Ying turned around and asked someone to boil the water. She took a shower and changed her clothes. After playing with Guogua for a while, she asked someone to take out the soybeans and began to pick and soak them. The next morning, after waking up, she made a lot of dried tofu and tofu skin. She told Chuanxiang and Dongxiang, who were helping her, we now have to eat tofu instead of meat. Don't touch any meat or fish. Do you understand? Not even lard. Don't worry, mistress. We definitely won't do anything rash. Okay, next, I'll teach you how to make tofu skin and dried tofu. After Zhu Ying finished speaking, she explained it to them while doing it. It was already noon when they finished. After dinner, Zhu Ying brought Jiyu Chenglin a big bag of braised tofu and asked him to go to the academy. She brought a basket to the palace. She saw Jiyu Warning sitting listlessly on the recliner and greeted her. It's hot, right? Why didn't you prepare more ice? It's fine, and I don't have the strength. Jiyu Warning sat up after she finished speaking. You're tired and hot. Rest well for the next 2 days. After Zhu Ying finished speaking, she put the basket aside and added, you're pregnant now. You can't go hungry. I've prepared some tofu. Although it's not as good as meat, the taste is similar. You can save it and eat it slowly. Sorry to trouble you. Oh right, why didn't you bring Guogua along? She was still asleep when I came out, so I didn't disturb her. Besides, she would easily make a big fuss, so it's not suitable for her to enter the palace. After chatting for a while, Zhu Ying saw that she couldn't raise her spirits, so she didn't talk anymore. Instead, she left the palace to go to Mrs. Yarrow and the others, and she seriously instructed them. Be it food, clothing, or words, she told them to be careful and not let anyone catch hold of anything to use against them. Ying, Do you think Wan will have a chance to be the Empress this time? Mrs. Yarrow asked softly after repeatedly ensuring she would not make a mistake. We can't do anything about this, and it's not our business, Ju Ying said with a firm expression. Also, you're not allowed to say this a second time. You should also restrain the family from saying something similar. It's not that serious, right? Mrs. Yarrow replied with a sheepish smile. The matter of the assassin has yet to be settled. Hearing her say this, Mrs. Yarrow also reacted and knew this could not be mentioned again. Otherwise, people might not know what to think of their GU family. Don't worry, she promised. I won't say it again. I won't let our family say it either. It's good that you understand. Sometimes, a seemingly inconspicuous sentence can be a disaster for us if used by others. Ju Ying said that and left. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.